guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at It's Jessino. This is live Q&A. This is what everybody's been doing over the international break, I think, to get over the lack of things to talk about. I saw that Arsenal Vision had done a mailbag pod, which is essentially a Q&A. I know Harry Symeou has done one or is going to do one, so I'm not being original. I just was like, everybody else is doing it. Let's do one of these. So yeah, you know when I've ran out of things to talk about because I do some sort of Q&A. But nevertheless, I'm excited to spend the next hour or so talking to you guys and answering your questions. You ask, I answer within reason though. So we're not going to be talking about like anything and everything, but within reason. You guys kind of know what that means, right? But yeah, so we can talk a little bit of Arsenal, football in general. Yeah, just kind of like a little session of that. So you guys can go ahead and start dropping your questions into the chat box and I will sort through them. I will do them by members will get first dibs. I'll try to answer member questions first, and then any other interesting questions that I see pop through from just everybody else, we'll go ahead and tackle those as well. So there's about 30 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. And just to let you guys know a little bit later, I will be doing an Arsenal women's review where I will be discussing the Arsenal women's loss against Barcelona in the Champions League, as well as their win against Everton that kept them top of the table, and their next match against Hoffenheim in the Champions League. So that will be a little bit later if you guys are interested in hearing about Arsenal women, which, I mean, to be quite honest, they're interesting to watch and they're fun to watch because they're actually really good. It's difficult watching the men's team struggle and not really be relevant, but Arsenal women are definitely like probably top 3 in the world right now in terms of the teams. Definitely Barcelona's number 1, but I would say Arsenal women are top 3, which is really, really good. So that'll be later on today. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Mr. Austin says, nice headphones. Thank you so much. They're actually not even new. Like, they're old. I've had them forever, but I was like, let me pull these out because the other ones that I bought from Amazon, these broke after two months. They're so like, and they weren't even cheap. Like, I don't know what happened with those. Sean says, good morning, Jess. Good morning to you as well. Let's see. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's see what's here. Hala Madrid says, which EPL team plays your type of football? It's a good question. Not a hard one to answer, though. It's Liverpool. Personally, I like the way that they play. I like a more direct style with basically what I like about the way that how Liverpool plays is they play out of the back and they pass the ball nicely, but everything that they do is with purpose and it's direct and it's quick and it's boombastic. It's not, timid or shy or scared. Everything that they do is with purpose and with drive. And I really, really like that. And that's regardless of if they're playing long out of the back or they're passing the ball. Everything is with purpose. And I really like that. I like that they play with a midfield 3. That's not necessarily like 2 DMs and a number 10. Usually it's just like Fabinho and then 2 other midfielders that are really neat and tidy on the ball. Your Jordan Henderson, Gini Wijnaldum was one of them as well. Thiago is really good. And I just like the way that they all can win the ball. They're all quite mobile and they get stuck in, but they're good on the ball. I like that versus like a 10 and then 2 DMs. Like, I prefer the more midfield 3 that they have, and the plug and play nature of it where they can kind of plug in different players in those positions and it still kind of works the same. And I really like the balance of Mane and Salah, like a lot. I think I said yesterday, or I don't know if I said it on here or not, but Mane is my favorite non-Arsenal player in the Premier League. I think he's criminally underrated. I don't know if he's gotten it yet, but he's like 99 goals in the Premier League. And of course he played for Southampton before he played for Liverpool, but that's a crazy amount of goals, isn't it? And I just like the balance. They're both really direct and aggressive and can keep the ball. But Mane is really more of like the facilitator and the worker bee. And then you have Salah that finishes off those moves. And as they've matured, they kind of switch roles and stuff. But I really like highly productive players in wide areas that can pass, shoot, and create. And then you have that false nine dropping in. And Firmino is kind of like on the end. Like I don't think he's really holding his weight, but Diego Jota does a really good job of it. And I think what I like about Jota is that he reminds me a lot of Martinelli in the way that he can drop in and be a part of play, but he's really just a chaos merchant. And he scares the living crap out of defenders. He makes really, really good runs and he's quite direct as well. And the goal that Mane scored against against Man City, when you watch like Salah dropped in, turned, and then passed the ball through to Mane. But Jota's run was really what made it happen, because he ran out wide and it created the space in between the center backs for that pass to go through. And I like the freedom that they play with. I like the directness, the aggression. And out of all of the teams that we have to play in the Premier League, I look forward to playing Liverpool the least. And that's like a Liverpool beating is worse than a Man City beating to me, because Liverpool just want it more and they just play a lot harder. And for me, it's hard to watch Arsenal not have that aggression and that willing to just run through a wall. And I also really like Klopp. I don't know if you guys know, but I am a big Dortmund fan, and I started watching Dortmund when he was the manager. So I just like everything about what Klopp does and what Liverpool does. And I think if I had to pick a way of playing, that would be the way that I would want to play. Fullbacks high, keeping the width, creating chances, and just kind of allowing, I like the way that they have that symmetry. One goes up, one stays back, and it's kind of like, I like that. We kind of play in an asymmetrical way, and I think the way that they play is a little bit more unpredictable. Hope that answers your question. Mr. Austin says, Arsenal women to win the league this season. I would think so. I think they have a really good chance of doing so. To me, it's a 2-horse race now between Chelsea and Arsenal. And I'm a big advocate, when the wind is blowing in your direction, I feel like even if you're not maybe the best team, you still can get it done. And even though I think Chelsea has had kind of like a vice grip on the league as of lately, they may have a deeper squad and some of the more exciting players, but I think Arsenal women, having the new coach and the new way of play, I think they have a really good chance of winning it this season. Let's see. Abdallah says, Don Jess, quick question. Is Bergkamp the best player to ever play in the Prem? For me, as much as I love Chelsea, Bergkamp defos for me. Well, I know you're like an eye test person and not a statistical person. So maybe on the eye, Bergkamp was the best player for you to play in the Premier League. I think supremely talented player, sometimes a little bit underrated. I don't think Bergkamp gets a lot of the plaudits that he deserves. That's probably because his statistics are not out of this world. And back then, statistics weren't something that you really looked at as much as you do now, because they started really getting into statistics in 2004. So it was a lot of eye test and just what did the player make you feel? You could tell who was more superior, and Bergkamp was a superior player at that time. So for me, it's still Thierry Henry. I just think he has the eye test and statistics to back him up. And he also has the clout behind him in terms of making people want to come to the Premier League, making people want to watch the Premier League, younger players wanting to be like him. And I think it's a soft factor, but it makes a difference. So for me, it's still Thierry Henry, but I think Bergkamp is underrated. Let's see. Sean asks, do you think YouTubers, podcasters in projecting their opinions sometimes overdo the analysis and should wait and let things happen? Well, I mean, I think that's it's an interesting question. I feel like the reason why we project and we overanalyze and we nitpick from day to day to day is because that's kind of our job to do that. And if you wait and see, there won't be any reason to even have a podcast, I feel like. I feel this this industry and content creating and podcasting in terms of sport or football, I think you kind of live in the ifs and buts and maybes. That's what we really talk about. Like, if we had played this player, if he had made this substitution, um, things like that. And so if Arteta is unable to get us to score this amount of goals, if we lose to Aston Villa, if we beat Crystal Palace, that's kind of the job, and we speak about things and analyze things that haven't happened yet and may not happen. But that's kind of the job, is we live within the ifs and the whens and the buts. And after it happens, then we analyze that. I feel like if you take that away and you just say, okay, I'm only going to talk about something once it's done, we will only we'll talk about this season at the end of it, and just say, okay, well, this is a season review. We came in sixth and that's it. And the joy of podcasting and content creation is talking about the ifs, the buts, the maybes. And if they happen, they happen. If they don't, they don't. But I think it's also up to the listeners and the watchers and viewers or whatever to take what you hear and make your own assumptions or your own conclusions based on what you see. And so I feel like it's perfectly fine for us to talk about the ifs and buts and maybes and make opinions based on that and kind of talk about, because it's fun. I can't lie. Making predictions is fun. And tomorrow night, we're actually going to be doing at 9:30 p.m. We're going to be revisiting some of our predictions at the beginning of the season and talk about how they've kind of how it's going. And I think that that's fun. And as long as you know that it's just somebody's opinion and you don't have to take it as your own, I think it's perfectly fine. But yeah, I think it's perfectly fine to analyze things, and the ifs and buts and maybes are kind of what this is all about. Let's see. Usopp's Rubber Band says, where do you think we as a club will be in 5 years? That's a really difficult question, because I don't even know where we'll be within the next 18 months. And I think for me, that's what I'm looking at, is the next 18 months are really important in terms of where we go. I think things are getting more competitive, even besides the Newcastle situation, which I think at this point is like, we haven't seen anything happen yet. So, let's put it to a side for a minute. But ultimately, the Premier League is getting so much more competitive, and top six looks like something for me at the moment that's difficult to get. And it shouldn't be, but it is. So the next 18 months for me are really important. I feel if you get the right striker, potentially the right striker, Emile Smith-Rowe and Saka can add goals to their game. Odegaard improves. I think he's an important piece to this puzzle. We bring in another midfielder. We could be in a good position. I don't know. It's hard to predict 5 years out, because that's so far away. I hope that we're in Champions League, but when I see the way Man City and Chelsea and Man United are spending and how well run like Liverpool is, I don't know if I can see us breaking into it within the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, the majority of our players that we're kind of banking on becoming this new foundation for this project will be between the ages of 24 and 27. So they'll be pretty much prime age players at that point. And so I would hope that they've improved to the point where they are pushing for top four, and maybe they are, but I just feel the competition is so intense. I do think we'll be back in Europe, at the very least, Europa League. And that's what I'm hoping. But for me, I'm looking more towards the next 18 months, and do we continue to spend and finish off the project, and it will never really be finished, but can we at least get the key positions that we neglected to get this past window, in a striker and a midfielder? I think those two positions change the trajectory of what we're trying to do. I think the Tavares signing, the Lokonga signing in particular, are not signings that move the needle in the short term. Odegaard kind of does that. Ramsdale kind of does that. And Ben White is still inconclusive. Tomiyasu, I feel like, is a center back in the next 5 years or so, next 2, 3 years, really. So we need those big signings. That striker needs to come in and that center midfielder so that we can kind of push forward. But I would say in the next 18 months, I would be that's what I'm really more looking at. But in the next 5 years, I would hope that we're at least in Europe, because I also think in the next 5 years, they'll increase the spaces in Europe, in the Champions League, in the Europa League, to include more Premier League teams, because the Premier League teams are a lot better than the other teams in Europe. Rancid Pumpkin says, which team do you follow during the international break? Well, the US men, that's pretty much the team that I follow. And Brazil. Brazil has been my team, like, for as long as I can remember. When I was younger, and I was so obsessed with Ronaldinho. Like, I just thought he just made football so fun to watch, and I miss that a lot. In the game, I just feel like the efficiency aspect of football has taken away from some of the flair and the fun of it. And Ronaldinho was a special player to me. So in that, I decided to start watching Brazil. And so I do follow Brazil, like, in international breaks, and the US men. I don't ever have a dog in the fight when it comes to, like, the European teams or England. I watch those games to see our players. Like, when I say I'm watching England, I'm watching Bukayo Saka. Like, that's what I'm doing. But yeah, Brazil and the US men's national team are who I like to watch during international breaks. Let's see. Tony says Mane is my favorite non-Arsenal player too. Yeah, I love that guy. I think he's class. Like, he's so good, and he scares the crap out of me. Like, Salah and Mane scare the crap out of me. Like, I just don't think, like, they're more scary to me than, like, than the Man City front line. I just think what they can do to you is so scary, and I just haven't seen an Arsenal team deal with them properly yet. Let's see. Yeah, it's Ronaldinho for me. Even though I do like R9, I think it's just Ronaldinho is just special. Favorite team outside of the Premier League is Dortmund. I do follow Dortmund when I'm not following Arsenal. But being a Dortmund fan is pretty painful as well sometimes. I mean, Dortmund always have a really good plethora of young talent, and they play good football, but they leave the back door open. And so they get scored on a lot, and they tend to give up leads. And it's painful watching a team just decide to be defensive optional. I do like Marco Rosa a lot, and I think that once he gets a grip on the team, things will improve. But I think it's also difficult when you're kind of like a selling team. You're never going to really be able to compete with Bayern Munich, so I never really expect them to win anything. A little, like, a couple of years ago, they actually used to try to compete a little bit more. Now you could just kind of tell that it's like, develop the players, sell them for a big profit, and stay in the Champions League. And so it's difficult sometimes to watch it, but they are a fun team to watch. There's usually a ton of goals. It's rare that you see a 0-0 type Dortmund game. It doesn't happen. And there is some top talent on that team for sure. And that's why it's funny to see that Lucien Favre is being looked at for the Newcastle job, because he used to be a Dortmund coach and I couldn't stand him. So it's going to be interesting to see. Billy Feraldi says, what makes you support Arsenal? I just started supporting Arsenal a long time ago. So in like 2002, they started to like show some of the Premier League games like in America, and they would only show like the best teams. So when they first started showing the games, they would show Manchester United and Arsenal games. And the first team that I actually saw that was a Premier League team was Manchester United. And I thought that they were interesting. I actually really liked Roy Keane. I thought he was good. I think the thing about Roy Keane that I think people get wrong is that he's just this brute, but he was actually a quality midfielder. He just had a really bad temper, but he was an excellent captain. And Dwight York and Andy Cole are two players that I think were also criminally underrated. And those were some of the first players that I saw from the Premier League. Then the next weekend, I saw an Arsenal game and I was like, oh, forget that Manchester United shit. I'm an Arsenal fan. I like this shit. And a big part of it was feeling like a connection to the team because I'd never seen a team that had so many Black players on it that were like amazingly good. And, at that time in like 2002, I mean, that was peak Arsenal. And I love the way that they played. I love the tenacity, the aggression. Like, I liked that we got stuck in. Like, I love that we could play pretty, but we also were willing to fight as well. And so, and Arsene, like the Arsene story, like back then, Arsene was he was a special character, and I just loved everything about it. Like, that time was really magical for Arsenal, and so that's really the main reason why I chose them, was because I could only see Manchester United and Arsenal. Arsenal had players that I could relate to. I like the style of play. I like the story, and yeah, we were really, really good back then. So I that's kind of how I started following Arsenal. Let's see. Let's see. I'm looking for the questions, you guys. Tahir, thank you so much for your super chat. Tahir asks, who did you first start watching football with? Was it a parent or a sibling? I'm an only child, and so I started watching with my mom. My mom is a huge Arsenal fan. Sometimes she's in the chat, like hanging out with you guys, but she's maybe even a bigger Arsenal fan than me. Even when I'm like super negative, she's like so positive. But she's one of those kind of moms that, like, when like anything that I was into, she tried to get into it as well. And so she even like refereed some of my games when I played. She was like big into it, and like I just wanted to see more football because all they would show us was like the Mexican League, the MLS, and like US women, and that just wasn't enough. And so she actually found the Arsenal games for me. And so we started watching together. And we did get a chance to do like a tour of Highbury, but we never got to see a game there. And the first time that we actually saw Arsenal play in person at the Emirates was when Unai Emery was still in charge. And it was Arsenal versus Brighton. So yeah, it was the game that Granit Xhaka fouled the guy in the box. That was my first Arsenal experience in person. But we also got a chance to go before the pandemic to watch Arsenal versus Newcastle, where we won 4-0. And that was a very, very nice night. Let's see. Yeah, you guys could go ahead and keep dropping in questions. Mr. Austin says, your mom seems like your best friend. She is. Like, I love that woman. I love that woman. Like, she's amazing. Like, one day I'll get her on like a watch along or something because she's so funny. Like, she's the funniest person I've ever met. Let's see. SMRFV7 says, who do you want Arsenal to sign to replace Aubameyang and Laka down the line? We kind of talked about this yesterday in the early show, and I think for me, I want to see somebody of the profile of Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Yusuf El-Nassiri. That's what I want to see. A taller striker, physically imposing, quick, good with their head and with their feet, a little bit of, okay, they're basically saying as a target man. Like, that's, but I associate target men with like guys with no skill that can't do anything but just head the ball in the back of the net, like a Pope, or no, it's not Pope. What's his name? Chris Wood, like that. That's not really what I'm talking about, but you guys know what I mean. Like somebody that can hold the ball up, but also be a part of build up the way that Aubameyang kind of struggles to. I think we need something like a combination of the two, of Lacazette and Aubameyang. And I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin, although I do think that maybe he's a little bit rough around the edges in terms of his technical quality. I think somebody like Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Yusuf El-Nassiri would fit in perfectly. I also like that they're 24 to 25 years old. I don't want to see any more under 23s. I don't. I think we have too many in the squad already that need to develop. I think we need somebody that's already kind of played men's football for a couple of seasons and put up numbers that we can look at and say, okay, even if there's La Liga, Bundesliga, Liga and tax, we know we're going to get X amount of goals from this guy if we put him in a good system. That's what I'm looking for. So those are the two that I would look at. And I also would have taken Tammy Abraham. I would have. Let's see. Yeah, this is a good little list. DSL or DCL, Isak, El Nasiri, Vlahovic, Watkins. Watkins for me is a very good player, but he doesn't really fit that mold for me. But I get that this is like your order. Alexander Isak is somebody who I feel like if Aubameyang was still banging in goals and we didn't need somebody to step in right away. I think whoever we're bringing in needs to start over Aubameyang because Aubameyang is going to run his deal down, right? I think we know that. So for me, I would prefer somebody who can come in and instantly start. And I think with Isak, because he's 21 years old, and I still think he's probably about a season or even maybe two away from being ready to step into those shoes, I would stay away from him, even though I feel like out of everybody that we've named, Dominic Calvert-Lewin and El-Nassiri and Nassiri, Isak is an Arsenal player. Like when you watch him play, I see like somebody who fits straight into the Arsenal philosophy. I think he's super smooth on the ball. He's tall, but he's elegant. And I think his technical quality is something that you don't have to worry about, but he can also hold the ball up and he's lightning fast. If he was older, I would take him in a heartbeat. Let's see. Tahir put in another super chat. Thank you so much. Tahir says, I'm a Chelsea fan, but I love your work. Would you consider covering more of the Premier League games besides just Arsenal? Yeah, for sure. Like the thing is, you guys, is that like I want to get this channel really nailed down before I try to start doing something else, because then you start to like ruin everything. So with Arsenal, I want to keep this channel primarily Arsenal. I think that's what does best. And then on my personal channel, at some point, I'll start to cover other teams and stuff. I do watch every single game in the Premier League. Like, I can't get enough. Like, I actually have no life. Like, this is my life, is watching football and then talking about it. So yeah, at some point I will get to the point where I can cover the other games that happen in the Premier League and maybe a little bit of Bundesliga, international football, and more of the women's game. But I need to make sure that this is running smoothly before I jump into that, because I don't want to like have too many things going on at once. But yeah, of course. And I do talk about other things on the Football Terrace when I'm on there. I do get a chance to talk about other people's teams. And so yeah, you can catch me on there, and I usually have a thing or two to say that will rattle a fan base or two. You know what I mean? Yo, I see you. Yo says target man is just a role like false nine, second striker, shadow striker, etc. Both Heskey and Giroud played the same role, but differently due to qualities. Yeah, and that's why it's like I don't really want to say like target man. It's more of just like somebody that can hold the ball up, but also has the technical quality necessary for us, and that's good in the air. You know, those are the main qualities that I'd be looking for. And so if you're looking at it, I would prefer, like if you look at the two options there, like Heskey and Giroud, I'd prefer Giroud. Mr. Austin says Jess is a full-time YouTuber now. I mean, you guys, I love it. Like I don't have a life. Like I actually prefer doing this to anything else. Like, like this is it. Tony says, how much does not being in Europe this year hurt our recruitment? How much would it hurt if we were out next year too? I think you could tell that it hurt us. There were some good deals that I feel like we could have done had we have been in a different position. And I do think that there's some deals that didn't come to fruition that we heard something about, but they just kind of dissipated, like somebody like maybe in a war, that I don't think he would come to us unless we have European football. Um, so I think bringing in players like Lakanga and Tavares and stuff, those are great players, but I do think we were limited to players that view Arsenal as a step up. And usually with that, if you want to get highly talented players, they tend to be younger if they still view Arsenal as a step up, if they're talented. If they're talented and they're not young and they're prime age, they're not going to see Arsenal as a step up. Even if they're at Brighton per se, or like let's look at somebody like Ivan Toney, for example. He's a Brentford player. So coming up from the championship, you would think that he would view Arsenal as a step up. I think financially for him, that's a step up, but psychologically and competitively, is that a step up for him when he may think that he could go to a West Ham, you know, or somebody that's performing a little bit better in the league at the moment. So I think in that respect, it's going to be difficult to recruit prime age players without Europe. We could probably recruit all the young players in the world without it because we're still Arsenal and we still develop good young talent and stuff like that. And who doesn't want to be in London? But the prime age players are the ones that worry me a little bit. And I do think not having Europe is an issue, not just from a recruitment standpoint either, also from our ability to get minutes to players that really need it. So even when you look at it from that perspective, even if you wanted to bring in somebody that wasn't necessarily going to be in a starting role, but going to be a part of a complement of players that were going to rotate in maybe those three positions behind the striker, who's going to come to Arsenal knowing that maybe they'll be behind Emile Smith-Rowe and Bukayo Saka, but there's not a lot of games to really play. That's even like the Saliba issue as well. Like, will he want to come and actually solidify his future at Arsenal, knowing that we don't have Europe? When is he going to play? So I think there are several factors that make not being in Europe difficult. I think also fitness wise, you see teams that are trying to make up for not having as many games by playing like friendlies and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think from a recruitment standpoint, it does hurt us. I think we'd be crazy to think that it doesn't. And if we're out next season, I really think we're in trouble. I really do, because we're now in that next bracket below. And so there's that top bracket of the top four teams, and we all kind of know who they are. Your Chelsea's, your Man City's, your Manchester United's, and your Liverpool. And then there's the bracket right below, which is like West Ham, Spurs, Arsenal, Aston Villa. I think that is that next bracket below. If we don't finish in Europe, that next transfer window, what is really, like, if you're a player, what is the attraction to Arsenal versus the other teams if we're not in Europe? And I know Arsenal's a bigger club and all of that, but I feel like we'll lose a little bit of that if we're not in Europe. I think we have to be in Europe to be able to push that will pick us over the other team that finished in Europe because we're Arsenal. If we're outside of the top six, or we don't have any Europe and we're trying to fight with Aston Villa and West Ham and they've kind of gotten Europe, I think it's going to really hurt us. So I look at the players that they're able to recruit now, and some of them don't have Europe anyway. Ollie Watkins, Danny Ings, those are decent players. I mean, if you look at Aston Villa's team, I think there's some players that you take. Leon Bailey, that's a player that I feel like Arsenal fans would want if he wasn't so injury prone. West Ham look like they can recruit some decent players. So I don't know. I think it's going to hurt us. But my biggest issue with not being in Europe is not having the games to develop other players. Let Martinelli have some game time, Balogun get some game time, being able to bring Saliba back in and offer him Europa League minutes. That's going to hurt us as well. And so when we have a game against Brighton where we didn't have a midweek game at all after the Spurs match, and that was supposed to give us the opportunity to have a fit squad so we're fit and firing, like, you didn't see that, did you? We're supposed to be able to take advantage of not being in Europe and beat the teams like Brighton because we don't have midweek games. And I never really believed the whole like, oh, if we're not in Europe, we'll be 100% every single game. Never believed that for a minute. Being outside of Europe is going to hurt. It hurts Arsenal more than it's a benefit. Mr. Austin says, your live stream during the Spurs game was quite something. Never seen you so excited like that. Oh my goodness. Like, yeah. Well, first of all, we never did a watch along where we won. So actually we'd never done a watch along where we scored a goal. Like, you know what I mean? So that sounds so bad. But yeah, like it was exciting. And I was talking to Souls and George about this yesterday, and I was like, it just hits different when it's the players from the academy. I can't explain it, but like it's something about watching Saka and ESR get better and improve that just like you get like that warm and fuzzy. Like, it just feels like so nice to watch. And then at the same time, like we're watching them grow up. Like, and so it's like not only beating Spurs, scoring against Spurs, whatever, it's the fact that it's Hale End and you just love these kids to death. Like, so I was very excited and yeah, I loved it. Yeah. Billy says, I take McGinn. There are players on those teams, West Ham, Aston Villa, that you would take. Would you guys take anybody on Spurs? Let's be real. Like, besides Son, and he's 29, there's nobody on Spurs that I would take. But on West Ham, I wanted Ben Rama. I'm not going to lie. I was upset when we didn't get him. So I would take Ben Rama. I'd probably take Declan Rice as much as I've hated on him in the past. I'd probably take him looking at our midfield the way that it looks now. Yeah, I would take them for sure. And then from Aston Villa, McGinn is an interesting player. I think we don't have a midfielder like that. We don't have midfielders that can run and sprint and get stuck in, can score goals from midfield. We don't have that, and he's definitely that. He can hit the ball from outside of the box, and he also can get in the box and make things happen. So McGinn is a good shout. I like Douglas Luiz. Ollie Watkins is a decent player. Leon Bailey is a good player. Like there are players that I would take off of those teams. Like, you know what I mean? Here we go. We got a spammer. Let's block Batty Boy Lewis. Okay. Bowie the Cat says, do you have any superstitions when watching Arsenal? Not really. I don't. There's nothing that I do specifically. I know I have a really hard time watching the games. I'm not a good watcher at all. The world is ending always, like when Arsenal is playing. And so the main thing that I know I do is I don't listen to the commentary at halftime or before the game. I don't. That's not a superstition. Okay, there's somebody just like spamming the chat. There's I cannot watch them. I can't listen to them because everything I hear is just I hate Arsenal. Arsenal's the worst. I hate Arsenal. Arsenal's the worst. So when it's like I think it's like Rachel, oh no, what's her name? What's her name, you guys? What is her name? See, now I'm forgetting her name. Rebecca Lowe, Robbie Musto, Robbie Earl, those guys, Higginbotham, those guys, I cannot listen to them. Tim Howard, I cannot. So that might be a superstition. I just don't listen to them because they make my head hurt. G. Kasi says, still against the Ox return? Absolutely. I don't know what he adds. Like, I really don't. Do we know now what position he plays? Because when he played at Arsenal, we didn't know. I think he wanted to play like 10 or central midfield, and he always played out wide. Back then, out of that group, he was the one that I never really I was like, what is he? And I still feel like, what is he? Now we know what is he and can he stay fit? And I don't think he will. I don't think he adds anything. He's just an extra body at this point. So I am against Ox return even on loan, because I don't see how what problem he fixes. I just don't see it. He can't even get a game for Liverpool. Like, it's just no. Um, let's see. G. Cassie says McGinn is top 6 quality. He's growing on me. Like, at first, I was like, why does everybody like him so much? But he's growing on me. And I feel we just have too many specialists on our team. And we have over the last 5 years where we have players that were kind of good at something, but everything else they kind of fail at. And that's kind of like the Xhaka thing, is what he's really good at is not really what we need. And what he's bad at hinders us greatly. And I feel midfielders like McGinn really make you realize what you're missing. Players like Declan Rice really make you see what you're missing. You need all around midfielders that can run and can press and can put pressure on the opposition and score goals in your midfield. You need at least one of those. And we don't have one. Even Ramsey, as good as he was getting into the box, I think he lacked some other things that didn't, his game wasn't round. I think he was excellent and elite in certain areas, but he still had some key things missing. Being defensively competent was one of them for me. So, and that's why I never wanted him to play in midfield. So I think having well-rounded midfielders that can kind of do it all enable you to move into a midfield three. And we don't have that. We have a bunch of specialists. Xhaka is one of the biggest ones. We rely upon somebody that's really good at something that we don't really need and bad at a bunch of other stuff that we need badly. So, yeah. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Billy says, is it just me or anybody in here fancy the return of the prodigal son, Serge Bloodclot Gnabry? Oh, of course I would take Gnabry back. I mean, he's one of the best players to leave us. Look at the things that he's won since he's left Arsenal. And he's in his prime right now. If he could play if he could play the left side, I think, and I don't know if he can because I don't watch him enough, but I just remember him playing on the right. And I don't want anybody to move Bukayo, even if it's Gnabry. I don't want anybody to move Bukayo. But if he was willing to come back, of course, that would be amazing. I just don't know if I believe that he would come back to this Arsenal in this state at the moment. It would be nice to have somebody in that front line that was Pepe's age, but could give us prime player reliability, if that makes sense. So, and I think somebody like Gnabry could give you that. He also has the experience, the winning experience, has an affinity for the club. So, I mean, it does make sense on paper, but at the same time, I just don't know if he's just blowing smoke or not, trying to make us think that he would come back, but he's really but not without Europe, So I do love Gnabry, and I think if he was willing to come back, he would be perfect with a new striker. If we could get a new striker and then play Gnabry and Saka on the wings and Odegaard in behind, I do think that would be interesting. Or even Emil Smith Rowe in the 10 and push Odegaard back into the double pivot. But yeah, I think on paper it makes sense, but would he want to come now in his prime? He's only 27 years old. I feel like if we had an opportunity to get Gnabry back, it would be when he's in his 30s. Yeah, Gikasi, the earliest Gnabry would consider coming to Arsenal is probably in 3 or 4 years' time. Clement says if Wilshire wasn't injury prone, he will win into this Arsenal starting 11 as Cam, who can score 5 to 10 goals a season. I don't know if that's a question or not, but I'm pretty freaking sure if Wilshire was fit, and could have stayed fit, I not only think that he would be one of the best number 10s that Arsenal has ever had, but I don't think we would have been able to keep on to him. I think that he would have ended up at a better team. I think he would have ended up at a Barcelona or a Bayern Munich. I think his his levels were above everybody else in that age in that group that came in, and that includes Ramsey. That guy was so good. And I think I know people love Ozil, and I get why, because Ozil was special. But I also think Jack was special in his own way as well, playing deeper in midfield and being kind of like that. You could kind of like it. I feel like he was different because he could play deeper and he could also score goals. He was kind of more of a well-rounded midfielder, but he had the technical quality, but he forced that aggression part of his game, and that's ultimately what got him injured. But I just feel like he would have been perfect. Like, I just love Jack Wilshire, but of course, I think he could have got us at least 5 goals a season, but I also think we would have had a hard time keeping on to him because I think he was just that good, you know? He was so good. Uh, S says Patino is the new midfield prodigy. Anyway, I did see something come out in Football London. I don't know, if that's like super credible or not. I just know like Chris Wheatley like works for them, so I'm sure like there's something there. But that Arteta's like wanting to push Patino and Flores into the first team, and I think that that's interesting. I think Patino, he's an interesting one because I think the hype is out there, and I do think he has that about him, but is he ready to play men's football? I think he's quite small, so it would be interesting to see how he copes in a first team environment, but at the same time, I don't think we should rush him. But I'm hoping that he gets some of that coaching and that mentorship from Jack Wilshire while he's there, because I think in particular they pattern each other, like they complement each other, and there's parallels there in the way that those two play, the way Jack used to play and the way Patino plays now, and I think it could be beneficial. Mr. Austin says 2 goals in a row for Party. I see Party's out there having a party for Ghana. You guys, I'm not even going to hold my breath and think, okay, well, because I mean, basically the entire team has scored on international break. Pepe scored, Aubameyang scored, Thomas Partey scored 2 goals, Saka scored a goal, ESR scored a goal, Aziz scored a goal and had like 2 assists, Tavares had a goal and 2 assists. Like, our whole team scored. Will they bring those goals back to Arsenal? I don't know. So I'm not even going to hold my breath, but at least we know that they can score goals. I mean, I think we knew that. They're just not getting in the right positions. You know what I mean? And the funny thing is that, like, and we kind of talked about this yesterday, is that Saka's goal, it hit, like, because it was like, one, do we have anybody that could do the pass that Foden did? I do think we do. I think Xhaka has that pass in his locker. I think Thomas Partey and Odegaard maybe can do that pass. But more importantly, I think recognizing that Saka was running in behind, and the how close Saka was into the goal, running into the box. I think that that's something that we lack. We don't run in behind like ever. That's just not something that we do. We don't run in behind. And not only that, like, that pass was in between, like it was right there on the 6, and we never pass the ball into the 6 and make the goalkeeper have to make a decision. It's always like passes out way wide, or a cross that just hits the first man. Like, I don't know. It's a weird one. I just feel when I watched that, I was like, why don't we get Saka into more of those positions where he's one-on-one with the goalkeeper, or Aubameyang one-on-one with the goalkeeper, or Pepe one-on-one with the goalkeeper? But you have to recognize that a team that there's a vulnerability and a player is running in behind, and make that pass. And I think if you think back to when we played, I think West Brom's Kids, basically, and there was a shot of Aubameyang and Saka making runs in behind, and Xhaka kind of held off and waited and passed it back. And I just think about that. I remember El Neni doing that as well. And I just think we miss those opportunities to take the opposition by surprise and pass the ball in behind for runners because we're so risk adverse and we'd rather keep the ball. We're afraid to do the risky pass. So it's interesting, but I don't think we put our offensive players in prime positions to be one-on-one with the goalkeeper and be closer into goal. We give them too much to do. Um, this is Luca's life. I didn't get your question. Can you send it again? And I'll answer it before we get out of here. So Party and Pepe are a good couple. I think they're friends. Like I think they're actually like friends. Like some players on teams. I don't know if you guys ever played sports, but there's some players that are always like super close. Like I always had people that I was really close with, and then just like the rest of the team. But I do think like Pepe and Party like have a little bromance going on, and I think that's just so cute. Billy says, what is your most embarrassing moment supporting Arsenal? For me, it's 40 million plus one bib. 8-2. 8-2. 8-2 versus Man United. Because they still bring it up now. Like, they still bring it up now. Like, that was embarrassing. Like, that was embarrassing. I think Baku was really embarrassing. And I think it was Arsene Wenger's 1,000th game and we lost like 5-0 to Chelsea. Those are like three of them. But I would say 8-2 Man United was super embarrassing. Like that was just, how do you give up 8 goals? How do you give up 8 goals? It's very difficult to give up 8 goals. And back in those days, I just felt like, and there's still some of this today, that we go into matches and we just decide it's okay to lose this game. So we'll just kind of give half effort. And once that first goal goes in, the second one and the third one and the fourth one are coming quickly after. And that's kind of ingrained, in Arsenal. And it wasn't there before. It wasn't there before 2004. It came after we moved to the Emirates, where we had this thing about us that when you come up against certain types of opposition, we just don't have the balls or the organization or the discipline to keep the game close and be competitive, even though the opposition is better than you. And that 8-2 was just a slap in the face. Like, it was very much like we didn't show up. And that was disgusting. That was embarrassing. Super embarrassing. Like, it's wrong. Like, it's like, who does that? This is Lucas Life says, sure, what are your thoughts on the Newcastle takeover? Does it affect for Arsenal? Yeah, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. And I do think in the short term, I don't think it hurts Arsenal or it affects us, but within the next 4 to 5 years, I think so. I believe it'll take them 4 or 5 years to become competitive. And what I mean competitive is pushing for European spots, whether that's somewhere between 4th and 7th. That's what I'm talking about in the next 4 to 5 years. Maybe a little bit shorter, but I still think it's going to take 4 to 5 years for them. I do think it affects us. I think it affects football in general, because I would expect there to be a reaction of some sort. You can't have 3 teams that are basically printing money like Chelsea, Man City, and Newcastle, and allow Liverpool and Man United potentially miss out on Champions League year on year. So I would expect there to be some sort of change in the way European football is distributed in terms of qualification. So I would think that there would be more spots in Champions League and more spots in Europa League for the Premier League teams, because those are the teams people want to watch. And as more money comes into the Premier League, the teams underneath the top 5 or whatever will end up getting some of that talent anyway. And that's who you're going to want to see. So, but in terms of us, in terms of like them replacing us or whatever, we've already been replaced. I think Newcastle is the 3rd team that will get a takeover and will overtake us. Chelsea already did it, and then Man City did it, and Newcastle will do it, but we're already out of the top 6. So it's kind of like, does it really matter? No, because there was no response after Chelsea and there was no response after Man City. There probably won't be one after Newcastle. So does it affect us? Will it push us further down the table and make top four more unattainable? Absolutely. If we can't qualify for it within the next 2 seasons, I don't see us being able to. And it would take a lot for us to qualify for it now. Even with a couple more good windows, I just think the way that these teams are spending, it doesn't match up to what we're doing and the quality of player that they're bringing in. Even Man United, and I think that sometimes they make mistakes, but bringing in Sancho, Varane, and Ronaldo is very different than bringing in Odegaard, Tomiyasu, Ben White, and Ramsdale. So I just feel this project and the players to get to where they need to be in order for us to be a real force in the league, I think that will be within the next 2 to 3 years. And that's also contingent on whether or not we bring in a midfielder and a striker. So I feel like the next 18 months are really important for us because that's going to be our window of opportunity to maybe pip somebody to get into the top four. But I think that's even looking like a closed shop. I mean, I don't think the Newcastle takeover really affects us in terms of getting into the top four because I'm not even 100% sure that that's a goal of the club. I think being in European football is the goal of the club. It used to be top four, but with the money coming into the Premier League, I'm not sure that they really feel like there's that big of a difference between being in Champions League or in Europa League. They just want to be in Europe. I think that's all it is. They just want a seat at the table when eventually they come back up with the UCL nonsense or the European Super League. When they come back up with that, they want a seat at the table. I think the way to do that is to make sure that Arsenal is still becoming a big brand. It still is, and that they're in European football at the very least. I don't think they're concerned about winning. I don't think they're necessarily super concerned about getting into the top four because it's basically unattainable at the moment. And so top six is probably just fine for them. And so, yeah, just to answer your question, I don't think the Newcastle takeover affects us. I think letting Chelsea and Man City get so far ahead, that hurt us more than anything. Shane Lowe says, what are your long-term goals for your career? Interested in your journey? Yeah. So long-term goals are basically content creator first and foremost. I always want to be able to sit in front of you guys and talk to you guys about Arsenal and football. So my goal is to just continue to grow my channel, have a personal channel as well, where I do some different types of content and show you guys a little bit more about like my life and stuff like that. But ultimately become a content creator and grow my channel and grow my influence. I just started to get back into the gym. So one of my personal goals is to not only be healthy and be well and all that kind of stuff, but make that into some sort of fitness business as well. Whether that's just being a fitness influencer or having programs and meal plans and stuff like that. I would like to do that as well. I'm an athlete naturally. And even though I have let myself go over the last couple of years, I do think that that's something that I could be really good at. And I would like to add that in somewhere. I'm also working on becoming like a legitimate presenter as well in sports and entertainment. So that's something else I want to add in there. And yeah, and then long-term investing, investing in something. I'm a big advocate into investing in other businesses or investing into real estate. And those are things that I want to do long-term as well. But in the short term, it's growing as a content creator, growing as an influencer, adding a fitness element to what I'm already doing, adding a personal channel to show you guys more of my life, and becoming a presenter. So that's kind of like the short and the long of it. And get paid to talk about football. Anything that is great for me. Let's see. Yo-Yo says, the current project relies too heavily on Arteta developing Arsenal are going nowhere fast. That is something that always stays in the back of my mind, that a big part of this project is contingent on whether Arteta can become this generational manager that they've kind of banked on. And I'm not sure that I believe that he will. I do think there's just as much of a chance that he does and he doesn't at this point. Um, I am struggling to see what the club has seen in terms of Arteta and what he can bring to the table. And I'm not sure that it's any more deep than he used to play for Arsenal. He was supposed to bring some of the Pep vibes over from Man City, and he talks a good game, and he has good ideas. I think people back him up, and there are people in the game that respect him, but respect based on what you've done as a number two at at another team that's set up for success, and coming to Arsenal and becoming a manager and being able to get those ideas across to the players and let it manifest itself on the pitch is very, very different. And I think he's struggling to do that at the moment. But I do want to see what he can do with his own players. And at the moment, we don't know. Like, I think, again, like you kind of said yesterday, I don't necessarily feel like we've turned a corner. I think we're off the road and we've gotten servicing on our car, and now we're going to see if we can get back onto the road and get back going in the direction that we want to go in. And it'll be really telling in these next couple of games. I still think we're going to struggle to score goals. I think we look at the players a lot and think that it's them. I tend to look at the players and look at the individual mistakes that they make in terms of not being cool and calm in front of goal. But ultimately, I think the system prevents us from scoring goals, and we don't get the most out of our attacking players because we're playing in a system that doesn't suit them. And that's an Arteta issue. And he has to develop beyond that. I think most managers in his position would try to get the best out of what they have. And he's done something a lot different. He does what a manager that's walking into a money factory like Man City would do. Go there, expect to get the players that you need for your system, and kind of bin off the ones that don't. And that's strange for me because I feel like your best bet of probably getting a goal or being really dangerous is some sort of combination of Martinelli, Aubameyang, Saka, and Pepe. But we rarely see Martinelli, and Pepe is kind of fallen off a little bit too. And then we have a bunch of players kind of out there that don't have end product. Our players are really good at running in behind, and they're fast and counter-attacky players, but we don't ever run in behind. It's a weird one. I just think we'll see. We'll see. But he does act like somebody that feels really comfortable in his job, and that worries me a little bit. I think a manager that's under pressure tries to get the most out of what he has at the moment and makes changes to the system to suit the players that he has. And he's basically went with the system, and if you fit, you fit. If you don't, you don't. You know, and that's weird to me. But this project is very reliant on him becoming this generational manager, and there's no precedent for it. There's no precedent for it, in my opinion, that a young team with mostly players under the age of 23 and some aging stars in conjunction with a young and inexperienced manager hits their benchmarks. I just don't. It seems unlikely, but at the very least, I do want to see what he can do with a group of players that is his team. I do think some of the things that have happened in the past weren't players that suited what he was trying to do. Now he has enough players to play that way, and so I would expect better results moving forward. All right, you guys, we'll be back a little bit later. I'll be back later to do the Arsenal women review. Again, we're going to be talking about the loss in Barcelona, Arsenal women being top of the league after beating Everton over the weekend, and their upcoming game against Hoffenheim in the Champions League. So if you want to come back and chat on that, I will be back in another 2.5 hours or so. So, yep. Thank you guys so much for joining me at this weird time. Again, we're going to be going back to 2 shows per day. And tomorrow, if you guys are wondering where George and Souls are, and Harry's actually on holiday, but Souls and George will be here tomorrow to revisit our predictions that we did at the beginning of the season. So make sure you join us at 9:30 p.m. UK tomorrow for that. But if you just want to talk on the Arsenal women and just learn a little bit more about them, come back in like 2.5 hours and we'll be doing that. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.